I think Robert Lewis leads Auburn in receiving this year.
And he's wrong.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mike G of the War Report hanging out with us on this War Report Wednesday. Mike, let's run through who do we think are going to be the top 5 receiving leaders for the Auburn Tigers this season. I think Robert Lewis leads the way, and I think a lot of that is going to come from him having the most receptions on the team, and I think just the fact that he's going to get the ball the most of the receivers. In my prediction, I think he's going to have the most yards at the end of the year as well.
I'm looking for Auburn to pick up yards in chunks. Notably missing from last year's offense, Zach, was the big play. That means Cam Coleman. Look, since the spring, from the 8A game to the first fall scrimmage that we watched, Auburn has shown commitment to getting Cam the ball down the field, at least getting him the opportunities. Right now, we know that if the ball is anywhere in his vicinity, he's coming down with it. So Robert Lewis is going to have to get it in volume, and I think Cam Coleman is going to get it in chunks, man. I'm looking for Cam Coleman to lead here. I think he might be Auburn's first 1,000-yard receiver since 1999, Ronnie Daniels.
I hope so. I think it's best for Auburn if Cam Coleman does lead in receiving this year, because I think it opens so much up for the other guys in key situations. Talk about key third downs. We've heard how good Robert Lewis and KeAndre Lambert-Smith have been in third down situations for Payton Thorne. And if the defense has to focus more on Cam Coleman in those situations, it allows you to keep your offense on the field because somebody else is going to be open. So I hope Cam Coleman leads Auburn in receiving yards, because I do think it'll be the best, not only for this season, but for the future, because then I think you can go to the Caleb Cunninghams and these other talented receivers that they're pursuing in the high school rank and say, like, look what we did. Look what we did here.
And freshmen get a chance to play in our system.
That's right.
So you're a talented freshman, I'm going to play you early. I think that the top schools in college football have been doing that for a while, Zach.
Yeah.
So, Hugh Freeze wants to get his talented freshmen on the field. He wants to get them to the pros as quickly as possible so he can recruit the next guy and keep that flow going at that position. I'm looking for Cam Coleman.
Yeah. So I've got Robert Lewis leading the way. I have Cam Coleman second, which I don't think is too much of a shock here. And it may be close. We'll certainly see. Who's number 2 on your list if you're projecting this out?
So the bar was on the floor last year, but I'm actually looking at KeAndre Lambert-Smith if he stays healthy. Now, we're talking about a guy who led Penn State in receiving last year there on the outside, but also we're talking about a kid who had more receptions than any Auburn receiver last year had targets.
That's insane.
In my one-on-ones with Payton Thorne, he loves KeAndre Lambert-Smith. I think those guys have an amazing chemistry. So where Cam Coleman might get it in chunks, I think that KeAndre Lambert-Smith is going to be that reliable guy when you need a catch on third down, right? 3rd and 8, throw it to KeAndre Lambert-Smith. He's going to be a great, I think, possession receiver at times. I like KeAndre Lambert-Smith to finish. Auburn's going to push the ball to the outsides this year a lot more than they did last year, I think.
I'm really timid when thinking about season-long predictions for KLS because of that ankle this fall. I mean, we've seen so many guys in the past that don't get this major injury, but it does kind of ding them up a little bit and it impacts them, or maybe they'll miss a game or two. And I don't want that to be the case for KLS, but that's why I have him in my top 5, but I don't have him in my top 3 for that very reason. I may be overreacting to it, Mike, and I hope I am, but that's why I don't have him in my top 3 in Auburn receivers this year.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say that the knick-knack injuries before the season starts worried me.
We saw with Jalen McLeod last year where it's like he didn't miss any time, but
was he the most effective? Yeah.
No. No, and that could be the thing where like the second half of the season, KLS is great. And it sounds like he's been awesome over the last week and a half of practice where they've let him go full speed and all that. So we'll see. And hopefully it's nothing, but it is weighing in the back of my mind just a little bit.
Understood. Right. Understood.
Got it. Dramatic pause.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you had more there. But like I wondered about this. Now, he doesn't have a history of injuries. Like, he's a tough kid. And we've heard that his commitment to his training and nutrition and recovery is he's setting the example for a lot of guys here as a senior guy who's coming in with a lot of experience. He knows how to train and he understands what you need to do to be successful at this level. So again, I'm looking for him to be, to be a leader there. Now, will he get the big chunk yards down the field? I'm not sure they're going to push the ball to him in that way, but
yeah,
I easily see him being the second most targeted receiver in this system this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, the top four options are all going to be pretty similar. It's just I think people are going to have them in different orders. Like Robert Lewis, I think the top four in no particular order: Robert Lewis, Cam Coleman, Rivaldo Fairweather, KLS. Like I think that's the top four. You may differ a little bit on opinion of who's going to be where. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. The thing about the guys, and the reason I'm picking the guys on the outside 1 and 2 is I'm not sure how. I know that Auburn's going to run a good amount of 12 personnel.
Yeah.
Right. And, Robert Lewis doesn't project to be on the field in 12 personnel. So if they ran it even as much as they did last year, the slot is a hard pick for me. So, in your scenario, I'm thinking that Rivaldo Fairweather gets those targets that would go to Robert Lewis in 11 personnel. Hugh Freeze wants to run more 11 and even some 10. But, hopefully we get to see some sets. If Payton Thorne is effective and he's accurate, Zach, I think we see the offense open up and you see not only Robert Lewis on the field, but maybe even Malcolm Simmons there. At that fourth wide receiver slot and just put your playmakers on the field and let them tear it up. That's what we hope. But Auburn's fail-safe is 12 personnel. That's what they're going to go to. And, we'll see. We'll see how much they get away from that. I think it's going to depend on the flow of the offense a lot.
Yeah, and also down in distance, right? If it's 3rd and 8, you may want more receivers on the field. If it's 3rd and 2, which I feel like we didn't see a whole lot of last year, you probably want 2 tight ends on there. So some of that may be situational as well. So my top 3, Robert Lewis, Cam Coleman, Rivaldo Fairweather. You've got Coleman, KLS, and who is your 3rd?
My 3rd, and I struggled over this one, but I do think that it has to be Rivaldo Fairweather. Okay. He's a beast, and they're going to get him. Now, he led the team in targets last year. I believe he led the team in receiving yards as well, too. Rivaldo Fairweather is a playmaker. I don't think they made enough of an effort or put enough emphasis on trying to get him the ball. But with the way these guys open up the offense on the outside, potentially, you've got to think that that's going to create a lot of opportunities for Rivaldo Fairweather to make plays. So, he's going to be in the 3rd slot there. Again, he's a guy who can go get a catch over the middle. He's got breakaway speed. When you looking at his tape coming into Auburn, Zach, I was like, wow, for a big guy, he can move and he creates mismatches. So, I look for Payton Thorne to go to him in critical situations because look, Coleman wasn't here last year. KeAndre Lambert-Smith wasn't here last year. Rivaldo Fairweather was, and all reports that we've gotten so far this offseason has said those guys have grown an amazing connection and chemistry, and I think it'll pay dividends.
Yep, I'm there with you. All right, who wraps up our top 5? We tell you in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Mike G, when you want to go to a game, an event, a concert, do you want it to be super difficult to get those tickets?
I don't, Zach.
No,
I don't.
You don't. You don't. That's why you need to. Everybody needs to get their tickets to the next event over at Game Time. Game Time, it's a free app. Go ahead and download it. You get the view from your seat, Mike G. You can actually toggle the pricing on to where you see everything that's baked in, where you're not paying $80 for that $20 seat. You actually know exactly what you're going to pay. Everybody does, and Game Time recognizes that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to anything with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Mike G, today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Home Field. You love Auburn swag.
I do love Auburn swag.
I love Auburn swag. I got this specific shirt from Home Field, and they've got these boxes where you get like multiple shirts, some hats, and some other swag to get you ready for the college football season. And of course, I don't know why you wouldn't pick Auburn if you're watching this show, but of course they have other colleges as well. They want us to make sure to say that. But use our code WAREAGLE24, all one word, WAREAGLE24, to get some extra money off of your order. That's at homefieldapparel.com. Mike G, so I just kind of gave this away a second ago, but my top four, I've got KLS at 4. Okay. I don't like him that low, but I just like I think the situation for the other guys is better. You agreed on the top 4. Is Robert Lewis 4 for you?
Yeah, I went back and forth on this one as well too.
Yeah.
I have questions about how much Hugh Freeze is going to want to play his freshman. Now Robert Lewis he's an experienced guy. They went out and got him.
Right.
I think, in some ways as a safety net, right? Where you have a guy who can be consistent. But so far, all indications are if they can get these dynamic freshmen on the field, I think they're going to do that. Yeah. And because of that, I think you might actually see Malcolm Simmons in that 4 slot.
Ooh.
Yes. Now, they released the depth chart. Hugh Freeze said at the press conference on Monday that he hates week 1 depth charts and he thinks they're complete crap. But there were some tidbits, I think, to pick there. And 3 freshmen at the 2 deep on the receiver at receiver stood out to me. Mm-hmm. And Malcolm Simmons, I think they'll use in a lot of creative ways his speed and his ball skills make him a kind of like a surprise mismatch for a lot of defenses. And I think the creative ways which they project to use him, I think puts him in that 4 slot. So I'm going with I'm betting hard on the young guys, man. I'm looking at Malcolm Simmons, and especially in these first 3 games, Zach. We'll see here in the late parts of games when they're going to want to get those guys a lot of work. How many yards he can pick up there. And if Hank Brown's throwing him the ball in garbage time, like I wouldn't be surprised in the first 3 games if you see the backups come and lead in some statistical categories, man, when the game's over and Hank's slinging them the ball. I think Hank has the best deep ball of all the QBs in the QB room right now. And, maybe he finds Malcolm Simmons, on some deep shots. We saw it during the first scrimmage, 75-yard touchdown by Malcolm Simmons. He projects to do that quite a bit here as first part of the season.
So the argument you brought up about personnel, with 2 tight ends on the field, that kind of had me thinking, like, am I too high on Robert Lewis? But I'm looking at this. So last year, just strictly yardage, Rivaldo led in receiving, then Javarius Johnson and Jay Fair. And both of them played more in the slot than they did outside. Jay Fair by a long shot.
Yep.
So to me, it's like I still think it's going to go to the slot. I think there's going to be plenty of reps to go around there.
Yeah, you're right. Jay Fair did. But if you remember, it fell off quite a bit at the end of last year. So, people were like, what happened to Jay Fair? Why aren't they playing Jay Fair? Well, they stopped running 11 personnel, so he came off the field. And we didn't see a lot of Jay Fair. From what I understand, they're still trending that way as a safety net. If anything goes wrong with this offense, we're going to see Auburn lean heavy on the run, and it's going to be a lot of 12 personnel. So, yes, you're right, but a lot of that production was in the first part of the season. Over the back half of the season, so once they got into SEC play against major opponents, there wasn't a ton of 11 personnel there.
Yeah. They still played a good bit with Fair and Javarius, so I don't know. My 5th one is Camden Brown. I think Camden Brown is going to be a guy who just gets 1 or 2 catches a game, and over the course of a season, I think it adds up to where he had a decent season. So I'm going with Camden Brown at 5. Some of the comments about Perry have been interesting about, like, when you ask Freeze or you ask other players, they talk about, it takes time to get acclimated.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a whole lot of answers about Perry that have been like, yeah, he's going to hit the ground running. Like, that's just not really what's said about him. It's he's going to be phenomenal. It's not that like he's phenomenal currently. So I had Perry at 5, and then I started thinking about it. I almost put Malcolm, and then I ended up going with Camden Brown just because I think the consistency and the opportunity will be there. So I'm going with Camden Brown at 5.
5 was tough for me because what Freeze, I got a chance to ask Freeze this at the press conference on Monday about Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson. So kind of sticking with that theme. And he said, so far they've had a free rotation is what he coined it, at receiver. So he's not a big fan of a guy running a go route and then, running back and then running another go route. He said, we need to be able to rotate in and rotate out. But he added the caveat that they're still struggling with missed assignments from the young receivers as well, too. So that's the thing that may keep them off the field. I'm with you on Cam Brown. I think as an experienced guy, the missed assignment thing is really what kind of stuck in my head. And if you're Cam Brown, you're more experienced than the young guys. And that, after, Cam runs down the field because that's who he's backing up. It's when Cam Coleman comes off the field, Camden Brown comes in. And, I think that he's going to have the opportunities, like you said, to get out there and make some plays. Now, it's all relative, at Auburn. Just because we have a guy in the 4 slot doesn't mean we think they're going to have a bad season. It's really just going to be about the volume of passes that we're going to see in this offense this year. Payton Thorne was bottom of the league in pass attempts last year, lowest for Hugh Freeze, any QB's ever coached, 260-something attempts, I think, after the bowl games act. So, we'll see. I'm looking for those opportunities for the receivers to go up, which is why I've got Camden Brown making this list. I think that he benefits from that.
So you've got Camden Brown at 5 as well?
Yes.
So you don't have Robert Lewis in the top 5?
I just think it's going to be my emphasis is on the outside. Right.
Yeah.
It's on the outside. I think the outside guys are going to eat a lot this year. And it's not an indictment on Robert Lewis at all. I think
you backed it up well. I just disagree, which is totally fine. And once again, I think Auburn having a presence outside is what's best for the offense. I mean, you talk about defenses having to pay attention to what's happening on the perimeter of the field for once. I mean, what's that going to mean for Jarquez Hunter? I mean, holy cow. What's it going to mean for Rivaldo Fairweather? Holy cow. So we'll see. My top 5, Robert Lewis, Cam Coleman, Rivaldo Fairweather, KeAndre Lambert-Smith, Camden Brown. You've got Coleman, KLS, Rivaldo, Malcolm Simmons. Love that pick. And then Camden Brown at 5.
Zach, one more point here.
Sure.
In the first few games will tell the story about where they decide to go with this offense. Hugh Freeze said Monday, he said, at some point, the tape has to be your resume. Mm-hmm. So you got to go out and you got to put on tape. Now, he was talking about the offensive line when he made those comments, but also I think that applies to everybody. So if they go out and, again, Payton Thorne looks sharp and the offensive line looks good in pass pro because, they're probably the most questionable position group on this team right now is offensive line based on what he's saying. They've got talent there, but they're still shuffling. And he said, we may be a few games in before we figure out what the correct combination of guys is in the right spots. That worries me a little bit. Yeah. So, if the pass protection may be a little shaky to start the season, I think that does not bode well for that slot position. And, we'll see how it goes. But if it looks good and they're humming and Payton Thorne is letting it fly out of his hand and he feels confident the receiver's going to get it, you'll probably be right. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we will see. We will see for sure. Mike G, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Go over to the War Report and follow us on social media. Well, tonight we got a live show, Zach, and people will be watching this tomorrow. But if you don't know, we're giving away tickets to every single home game. So if you want tickets to Oklahoma, because they're sold out, come on over to the War Report, visit our community, and make sure you leave a comment there so you can get in the running to win 2 free tickets to an Auburn home game.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Hey, like the video, please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.